Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today would be the last lecture of this semester, and I hope that you have understood some major concepts about morphology. Today we are going to discuss morphological processes, and specifically the focus will be on concatenative and non-concatenative processes. Okay, though we will have some other some models and some terms, but actually the major portion is about them. Okay, so as far as morphology is concerned, in present day world of morphology, or rather linguistics, we have three different models. Charles Hockett, who actually proposed the design features of language, almost 16 features. So he actually came up with the concept. He's a very good grammarian. He came up with the concept that actually there are two approaches rather to language. Okay, two morphological approaches to language. He proposed that there are two approaches if you really want to study morphology. So he divided those approaches and named them as IA and IP. Okay, item and arrangement and item and process. Okay, these were the two major distinctions that he made. And item and arrangement, I'm explaining each one of them, okay, in detail. Then on the third line we have Robbins, and he proposed another model, that's word and paradigm, quite simple. Okay, though it should have been excluded, but actually for the sake of some terminologies and some concepts which are quite relevant and plausible, that's why I've also included this, and also for the sake of learning. Okay, so let's discuss what we have here. Item and arrangement, what we call IA approach. Okay, so it is basically a morpheme based morphological approach. Okay, where word forms are analyzed as sequence of concatenated morphemes. So here we have in this approach what we have is that we have got word forms. Okay, that the language is actually this is both of them are structure approaches though. Okay, but this is more like a sort of a structure approach, more structure than IP, because that one is a bit different, though both of them are adopted and propagated by structuralists who actually believe that language is a structure. Okay, and it could be analyzed in terms of the structures. So in this case, in IA, that the proponents of this model propose that actually a language is what we have got items. Okay, we have got morphemes there, and the morphemes are arranged in order. Okay, one by one. Okay, one after another. Okay, and that's it. Okay, it's kind of you have some sort of you can consider language or the structure of the language as beads on a string. Okay, so this way of analyzing word forms as if they were made of morphemes attached to each other. Okay, so this is a kind of if you remember, there were two kind of processes. One was physical process, another was chemical process. So consider IA as a physical process and IP as a chemical process. So in physical process, so the items remains the same. You could identify, you can recognize each item. Like for example, if you mix tea and sugar, okay, physically, so you could identify black and white different some sort of grains there. Okay, so they're not they're not mixed in that way, they're not fused. Okay, so they do not become molecules in that sense. But in chemical reactions, in chemical processes, what we have is that when two or more than two ingredients are actually they interact with each other, so what happens that actually they lose their identity, they lose their chemical properties. Okay, and another entirely new substance is created. So that's actually IP. So IA is a very like items in and arrangement. That's it. Okay. So it is more like an addition. Okay, this is a sort of addition. Okay, like we are adding morphemes to the base form. That's it. Okay, so it is an additive in nature. It only allows addition and so cannot explain other morphological changes or modifications. Like for example, it may tell you that we have childless. So we have got one morpheme child and then we have got less. Okay. Find these two morphemes. So items, there are two items. There are two items in this word, and they are arranged, okay, like one after another. But they cannot tell you about some of the operations. Like for example, what about mouse and mice? Okay, so they cannot explain. IA cannot explain this process of mice. Why? Because we do not have like items in such a way. Okay, so in earlier example, in childless for example, okay, or helpless, so we can recognize different morphemes there. Okay, child and less, and cleanless, cleanliness even. Okay, so we can identify 2 or 3 morphemes there, 2 or 3 different items there. But in the case of like in the case of mice, okay, we cannot identify 2 morphemes there. Okay, that's actually the point here. Okay, that's the point here. And likewise, we have got the an example of went. So went has got 2 morphemes, but both of the morphemes are merged in such a way that it's really difficult to differentiate each one from one another. That's kind of like that's the problem, and that's the drawback of this model. Okay, so that's why in order to explain other morphological changes or modifications, we have got another model, and that's item and process. Okay, so keep this in mind that IA is basically a fixation. Okay, compounding or a fixation. Okay, either we have got affixes, okay, attached to bases, or either we have got compounding. We have got 2 different roots or bases which are fused together. That's it. But in IP, item and process. Okay, so we have got items, but we have got also process. So the previous one, IA, is a kind of it's a simple addition of different morphemes. But in this case, we have processes. Okay, we have got modification, we have got changes, we have got alteration. Okay, and the item and process model underlies the lexeme based approach to morpheme. So the earlier IA was a morpheme based approach to language or morphology. Okay, morphology of the language. But this one, IP, is basically a lexeme based approach to morphology that we consider lexeme. Okay, and we consider that what the lexeme has internal kind of like modification there. Okay, so in this model, instead of analyzing a word form as a set of morphemes arranged in sequence, a word is said to be the result of applying rules that alter a given lexeme in order to produce a new word. So the important point here is that one, that actually it is what the result of applying rules. Okay, rules that alter a given lexeme in order to produce a new word. This is really important. So instead of like describing that we have got a word form is a set of morphemes. Okay, it tells us that it tells us the result of the application of rules that have brought some changes to the in a given lexeme. Okay, and that's why we get a new word. Okay, or a new lexeme. So an inflectional rule takes a lexeme, changes it as is required by the rule, and outputs a word form. For instance, go, went, gone, men, feet, and sung. So these are some of the examples, okay, all of them irregular forms that cannot be explained in IA model. okay, item and arrangement model. These could best be explained in this model. How? According to IP, we have got some morphological operations that actually went, okay, is a form of what? Go, okay, and there is no sort of like a fixation, okay, no morpheme is attached, but rather some change has occurred to it, okay, internal change, some modification, a vowel modification. In some of the cases it could also be a consonantal modification, okay. These all examples are pertaining to a vowel modification. All of them we have got vowel modification, like go, went, gone, but rather we have got one example of consonantal modification too. That's went, because went is a form of the past form of go, but here it's not just the vowel, but rather the entire concept, the entire word is basically changed, okay. So that could also be an example of consonantal modification. Gone is also another modification of vowel and consonant together, a full mixed kind of modification, okay. So then we have got man and men. So here we have got vowel modification, okay. So no, like normally in regular forms, okay, we have got s or es attached to nouns to make them plural, okay, and that was quite easier for IA to explain. But irregular forms of verbs, irregular forms of nouns and adjectives cannot be explained in the previous model, item and arrangement model, okay. So IP can explain them, okay. Why? Because it's they call it change, modification, that's it. So they've got a term, they have they allow modification, okay, change. So the item and process approach bypasses the difficulties inherent in the item and arrangement approach, which were there in IA model, item and arrangement model, okay. So a process approach allows, this is a process approach, that was arrangement approach. So this approach, a process approach, allows much greater freedom of description because all kinds of processes are permissible here. So here, these processes are permissible here, okay, and that's the reason. So that's why this item in process IP model has got an upper hand over IA model, okay, fine. Then we have got word and paradigm approach, okay. The word and paradigm model of morphology is the basis for word-based morphological approaches to languages. So it's kind of this model does not indulge itself in morphemes and the internal modification like that. It has got a different way, okay. They will tell you that we have got a form live, this is a lexeme, and it has got different forms, like it has got a form of live and lives and lived and living, like that, okay. So I'll explain it later. I've got some almost 3-4 slides for this the last model, okay. Here it's just definition of that. So this approach considers the notion of paradigms as its central concept. So we have got paradigms here, okay. Instead of stating rules to combine morphemes into word forms or to generate word forms from stems, word-based morphology makes generalizations that hold between various forms of inflectional paradigms. So instead of like stating some, or some coming up with some rules to combine morphemes into word forms, just like was the case with IA, okay, or to generate word forms from stems, just like the case was with IP, item and process, okay, or this word-based morphological approach makes actually generalizations that hold between various different forms of inflectional paradigms, okay. So the crucial concept underlying this approach is that it is difficult to make generalizations without exceptions, okay, either by item in arrangement or item and process model. Under the word and paradigm model, words are treated as whole, lexeme, okay, as whole words that are related to each other by analogical rules. So words are categorized on the pattern, okay. We have got patternizations, we have got patterns here that they share with other members of the group, okay. I shall also come to this point, rather these points later, okay. First of all, let's discuss, the earlier two, models, and we see what we have. Morphological process is basically a means of changing a stem to adjust its meaning to fit its syntactic and communicative context. Okay, this is a morphological process. Okay, morphological process is what? It's basically the changing a stem to adjust its grammatical, its meaning to fit its syntactic and communicative context, its grammatical context. Okay, that's what we have. Like, for example, go becomes goes. Why? Because if the subject is third person singular, so it has to adjust itself, okay, in order to fit in there, okay, because the syntactic requirement is that the verb must be must be in the S or ES form. Like the verb must take S or ES. Why? Because the subject is third person singular, okay, in present tense. So this is like, we have got communicative, this is what we have got syntactic context. Okay, it could also be, there could also be some other requirements too. Like, for example, if we say men are dancing on the floor, so here we have got man, so it must take is. So if that's not the case, then we have to say men are dancing on the floor. Okay, so here we see a sort of a modification of men from man, okay, plural men, and it's because it's because we have got communicative requirement of that in that context. Okay, it must be in the plural form. Okay, that's the case here. So or it could also be cats. Okay, for example, cats are jumping from one floor to another. Okay, so it's kind of like that. So cats. Okay, so we have got S here. Why? Because it should have been in the in the plural form. So we have got two processes, concatenative and non-concatenative. Concatenative is basically that of IA, item and arrangement. Okay, it's linear and it's all addition. Okay, we have got affixes, we have got compounding. Okay, such processes involve the linear combination of morphemes or putting morphemes together, like is the case with affixation, for example. Okay, so what we have is in affixation we have got a linear kind of like a combination of morphemes. We combine or put morphemes together, okay, and that's what we have. So this kind of process is known as concatenative. Okay, today we call them as concatenative processes. This is a process, okay, because in IP this is also a process of addition. So this is one process. Then we have got another process, and that's called non-concatenative, okay, process. And what happens there? They involve the internal alteration of morphemes, okay, or modifying internal structure of morphemes. Okay, so we have got modification there. Okay, concatenative is equivalent to addition, okay, process of addition, and non-concatenative is equal to modification or change, okay, or alteration. Okay, this is what you should remember. Okay, the proposal by Charles Hockett could best be explained like this. Okay, this model is very important here. Okay, if you could understand it here, so this is the whole lecture. For another one that was like word and paradigm, I've got a separate section in the same lecture. Okay, but IA and IP are dealt with here. Okay, so consider concatenative as IA, okay, and this one is IP. So that's a sort of arrangement. Okay, but here in in IP, that their approach is called addition. Okay, addition. So this is also a process. Okay, fine. In IA model, they are not, they do not call these as processes, but rather just arrangement. Okay, it's kind of like order. Okay, fixation, that's it. But in IP, okay, everything is a process. Everything is a process. Even a fixation is also a process. Compounding is also a process. Okay, they call such kind of processes as addition. Okay, fine. And the rest of the process that we have under the term non-concatenative, they are all modifications, different kinds of modifications, which I'll explain in a while. Okay, so first we have a concatenative process. Okay, compounding is a very common process, and you are quite familiar with. Like, for example, we have got greenhouse, so we have got green and house, so an adjective plus a house. Okay, like a noun, adjective plus noun, green and house. Or classroom. Okay, so we have got two nouns, noun plus noun. So this kind of process is known as compounding process, which is also an additional process, and this is what we call concatenative process. Okay, and why? Because it's linear. Okay, and the items could be recognized. Like in class fellow, we can, or classroom. Okay, we can identify the first morpheme class, and then room or fellow or green plus house. So this is compounding. Okay, a fixation is another concatenative process in which we have different kinds of affixes. Like we have got in fixes, we have got suffixes, we have got sorry, I've written something problematic here. It must be prefixation. Okay, prefixation. The first one must be prefixation. Okay, the second one is suffixation, the third one is infixation, and the last one is circumfixation. Okay, so we have got prefixes, we have got suffixes, we have got infixes, and we have got circumfixes. Okay, prefixes is attaching something, a morpheme to the a bound morpheme to the initial, to the beginning. Suffixation, attaching the same any kind of like inflective morpheme to the end, to the tail of the base. Okay, fine. And infixation is basically inserting an item in the middle. Okay, inserting a bound morpheme in the middle of the word. Okay, and circumfixation is basically attaching two morphemes, sort of like one one part is to the beginning and the second part is to the end. Okay, but whatever, all of these kinds are fixation. Okay, so that's and we can say that they are all addition. Okay, additive in nature. Okay, they are all we have got the process of addition here at work. Okay, so that was all about concatenative processes. Okay, then we have got non-concatenative processes. Okay, this could here we do not have addition, but rather we have got what? We have got modifications. Okay, so we have got internal modification, which occurs within the word. Okay, within the word boundary. Okay, and we have got external modification, which is somehow like at peripheral. Okay, somehow outside the internal structure of the word. Okay, so let's discuss each one of them. Keep this in mind. The internal modification could be partial or total. Okay, partial means little, like there's a small sort of like modification. Like for example, the example we just discussed, man and men. So we have got just a modification of what? One vowel in the middle. Okay, a, sheep sound. Okay, replaced by a. So man, man. So this is a modification first of all. Okay, this is non-concatenative because it's modification. Secondly, it is internal. Why? Because it has occurred to the internal structure of the word man. And then thirdly, this is partial modification. Why? Because the whole structure of the word was not modified, but rather just a part, an item. Okay, a morpheme, a phoneme is modified. Okay, vowel is modified, and this is called a vowel modification, sometimes known as a blout. Okay, so this is partial modification. What is total modification, or what could be the example of total modification? It's also known as suppletion. is that of like, go and went. So went is what? A total modification. Or another example of could be that of adjective. Like for example, we have got bad and worse. Okay, so there is no relationship between good and worse. Okay, there is no morphological relationship. If you look at the morphological makeup, you cannot identify that they are related to each other. They are two different forms. Okay, actually, what we have is that both of these forms, worse and bad, are related semantically. As far as meaning is concerned, okay, grammatical class is concerned, both of them are adjectives, and both of them are actually related to one class, grammatical class, and they are just the degree. Okay, but actually the modification is total. Why? Because the entire word is changed. Okay, this is what you have to remember. So in partial modification, okay, we could have a vowel which could be changed. This is one possibility. Secondly, we could also have a consonant which could be changed. Thirdly, we could have a mixture of that, vowel and consonant, both of them. And the fourth one in partial modification would be the stress modification. Okay, like only the stress will change the class, of a certain word. Like for example, the case of object and object. Okay, so it's just the stress. Okay, the stress shifts from first syllable to the second syllable or middle syllable. Okay, so that's the point here. So we have got a stress. We have got a change in the in the stress syllable. Initially, in the case of object, okay, as a noun, the first syllable was stressed, but in the case of object, the second syllable is stressed. Okay, so that's just this is there is no any other modification but only stress modification, but it is also called phonological modification too. Okay, because the sound is changed there. Okay, so that's the general term, and stress modification is the particular term for this. Okay, for external modification we have got conversion, which you already know. Okay, and back formation, that's also quite common to you. Okay, reduplication, this is also quite common to you. So I think there is nothing else. Okay, let's just try to understand the rest of them. I'm not going to explain concatenative because they're quite simple and we have already dealt with them in our class. Okay, I'm just trying to explain the new terms that we have come across. Okay, and let's see what we have. The first one in non-concatenative processes is that of modification, internal modification, and within internal modification we've got partial modification. So it is also known as a blout, vowel gradation, or epiphony. The change of a vowel into another vowel in the root of a word with a grammatical function, usually for no visible phonological reason. That's actually vowel modification. In simple terms, we have got a change of vowel. Like for example, look at here. Okay, look at the base form, the first form of begin, and the past form or the second form began, and the third form begun. Okay, which is past participle. So all of these three forms, look at the vowel. Okay, specifically in the second syllable. So we have got begin, began, begun. So in it sound, then a sound, and then a. So this is a kind of like sheep sound and then cut sound. Okay, it sound here, and here we have got sheep sound, and here we have got cut sound. Okay, so what we have is that we have got non-concatenative process here at work. Okay, and and then we have got modification. Okay, what kind of modification is that? Internal modification. And then it is internal, but is it complete modification? Okay, total modification or partial? So it is basically partial modification. Okay, and the next point is whether it is the consonantal modification, stress modification, mixed modification, or vowel modification. So it's basically vowel modification. Only the vowel is changed, and just because of that we have achieved another form of the word. Okay, so this is the example of vowel modification. Look at the other examples. Ring, rang, rung, sing, sang, sung, and speak, spoke, spoken even, okay, and then we have got steal, stole and stolen, write, wrote and written, been, bound and find, found, okay. These are all examples of verbs, okay, where actually we have observed vowel modification, that only vowels are changed, okay, the sounds, okay. And when I say vowel, so we do not mean just this A, E, I, O, U. I'm trying to clarify the concept that when I say vowel, so I'm referring to all of those 20 vowels like that, okay. This is what you have to remember, okay. So in phonetics and phonology subject, okay, that might be quite familiar to you. So in nouns we have got mouse and mice. Again we have got a modification, internal modification, partial modification, and then we have got vowel modification, ablaut, okay, fine. And woman and women, again we have got modification, okay, even two vowels modification, okay. So this is vowel modification. Consonantal modification is basically where actually the consonant, okay, is changed, okay, consonant. Like for example, we have got believe and believe, okay. So f sound is changed, or replaced by v sound, okay, from noun to verb, okay. And then we have got grief and grieve, proof and prove, and advice and advise, devise and devise, and use and use, okay. Defense and defend, offense and offend, bent and bend, assent and ascend, descent and descend, okay. So you see here that consonants, the last consonant of the word is changed, okay. In the first one here, it's basically from f to v, and here from s to z, and here from s to d, and here from t to d, okay. That's what we have. Again, then we have got mixed modification. It's a type of partial modification in which more than one segment is modified. So earlier there was just one segment in vowel modification and consonantal modification. We had only one segment where it the modification took place. But here we have got some sort of like more than that, okay. Why? Because like look at the examples: catch and caught, seek and sought, teach and taught. So here it's not just vowel or consonant, but something a bit different. So it's kind of both vowel and consonant, okay. It's more than one segment, okay. So we've got some two segments here, okay. This is mixed modification, okay, fine. And then we have got stress modification. A base can undergo a change in the placement of stress to reflect a change in its category, grammatical category. Like for example, like we have got record and record, okay, and contrast and contrast, okay. Then we have got subject and subject. So you can see here that actually both of these forms are different, okay. In the first one, okay, we have got they are all like they are all nouns here, okay, and the stress is on the first syllable. But in the second case, okay, the stress shifts from shifts to the second syllable, okay. This is what we have. So this is also modification of stress, okay, and this is partial, okay. That's it, okay. Move on, and this is non-concatenative. Now move on to full, complete, total modification, okay, where we see that the entire word is changed, okay. Let's first of all try to understand what it is. A morphological process whereby a root morpheme is replaced by a phonologically unrelated form in order to indicate a grammatical contrast, okay. In suppletion, two or more forms are grammatically associated which are morphologically unrelated but semantically related. I have already told you that I and me are morphologically unrelated because there is nothing common between these as far as the spelling and the form forms are concerned, okay. But semantically, as far as meaning is concerned, both of them are basically pronouns, different forms of pronouns, different cases, okay. So that's the case here, okay. And you can extend the same analogy to the rest of them, okay, like be and was or were, and good and better and bad and worse, and person and people, okay. fine. And person and people, we have got just P, E common, and that's it. Okay, but even this is not very ideal example. Okay, then we have got the modification is total because the newly derived form is morphologically unrelated to the source root morpheme. Okay, so this is called suppletion. Okay, another name is basically suppletion or total modification. Okay, now move on to the external modification. These were all internal modifications. Okay, modification within the word. Now this one is a conversion. Okay, conversion is basically a process by which a word belonging to one word class is used to function like another word class without any change of form. Okay, like for example, to take is a verb and take is a noun. Okay, to print out is a noun. Is a verb, and print out is basically a noun. To comb is a verb and comb is a noun. So you see here that the forms remain the same. There is nothing different, but actually it's just the shift. Okay, just the shift. Sometimes stress could also play some role here, but that's not very common here. Okay, we do not see any stress here, otherwise it would have been something different. So from noun to verb you have got chair to chair, water to water. Okay, from adjective to verb you have got dirty to dirty, dry to dry, and slow to slow. And likewise in some of the cases, okay, the important point here is that in some cases conversion is accompanied by a change in the stress pattern known as stress shift. In some of the cases, okay, not all of the cases. Okay, fine. So move on to back formation. It's quite common. Okay, you know that we get a form from the original form. Okay, the root form. Okay, by deleting, okay, or detaching, okay, an actual or supposed suffix, okay, from the base form. And it is also a derivational process, you know that. Okay, so from motivation we get motivate. Okay, from on the left side we have got nouns, on the right side we have got verbs that have been that have been derived from the initial forms. And there is one example transcription. We have got transcript, which is also a noun, and transcribe, which is a verb. So we have derived two different forms, okay, from that by back formation. Okay. Okay, then what we have is that reduplication. Okay, so what we have is here that this is also external, nothing happens internally. Okay, sometimes it could be the rhyming duplication. Just because of the rhyming, two different linguistic units are fused together, like hockey pocky, razzle dazzle, or super duper, okay, or boogie woogie, or teeny weeny, or walkie talkie. So that was just like just the common thing is that of rhyme. That's it. And then we have got exact reduplication. Okay, like for example, bye bye and the rest of the choo choo and night night. Okay, and no no, pee pee, poo poo, and a blot reduplication, which is basically partial. Okay, and we have got vowel at work. Okay, when initially, okay, earlier we discussed vowel modification. Okay, and partial vowel modification. So that was a blout there too. So this is brick brack, chit chat, okay, and crisscross, kitty cat, and knick knack, pitter patter, okay, and splish splash, okay, splish splash, and we have got zigzag, okay, kind of like a very good exercise for slip of the tongue. Okay, so this is basically reduplication. So now I'm sending you another part. Okay, I'm going to stop it here. Okay, till that I'm discussing the third model in another part.